Hey everyone, I'm Matt Dolan with Dolan Divorce Lawyers in Connecticut, and today I'm going to talk about Jennifer's Law, which is a law that was enacted in the summer of 2021 to expand the definition of domestic violence to include coercive control. Now, the law was named after two women who were the victims of domestic violence. Jennifer Magnano is one of those women. She was killed by her estranged husband back in 2007. And then Jennifer Dulos, who has been missing since 2019, and it's presumed that she was killed by her husband, Fotis Dulos. So unfortunately, those two incidents had to occur for this law to be put into place. And sharing my screen, I'll go into the details of the law. So prior to this law being put into place, you basically, in order to qualify for a restraining order, you had to be the victim of more or less physical abuse, stalking, or threatening by a household member. So those are kind of narrow, they have narrow definitions, and I get into those definitions a little bit more in a separate video on restraining orders in general. And in that video, you can look at that if you want more information on how to file a restraining order and how that whole process works. But this new law, it expanded the ability to get a restraining order if you are the victim of coercive control. So just getting into the specific definition, the statute says that coercive control of a family member or household. So the definition is the coercive control of a family or household member, which is a pattern of behavior that in purpose or effect unreasonably interferes with a person's free will and personal liberty. Coercive control includes, but is not limited to, unreasonably engaging in any of the following. So the behavior that the person who is committing the coercive control has to be one of the following. So isolating the family or household member from friends, relatives, or other sources of support, depriving the family or household member of basic necessities. So if you're cutting off financial support so that they can't get food or the utilities aren't turned on, or they can't turn on the heat, things like that, that could be considered coercive control. Controlling, regulating, or monitoring the family or household member's movements, communications, daily behavior, finances, economic resources, or access to services. So if you're following them, or you're monitoring their text messages, things like that, you have tracking on their phone, that would be considered coercive control, or it could be considered coercive control. Compelling the family or household member by force, threat, or intimidation, including but not limited to threats based on actual or suspected immigration status, or to engage in conduct from which such family or household member has a right to abstain. So basically forcing them to do something that they have a right to not do if you're not kind of coercing them to do that. Or threats to getting them to abstain from conduct that the family or household member would otherwise have a right to pursue. So if you're preventing them from doing certain activities or forcing them to do certain activities, that could be considered coercive control. It also includes committing or threatening to commit cruelty to animals that intimidates the family or household member, or forced sex acts or threats of a sexual nature, including but not limited to threatened acts of sexual conduct, threats based on a person's sexuality, or threats to release sexual images. So those are all, that's the full definition of coercive control. Obviously, you can tell it's a pretty broad definition where many, an infinite amount of behaviors could fall into the definition of coercive control. So it's important, if you are a victim of domestic violence, it's important to consult with an attorney to, at least have a conversation about what you're going through and whether any of what you're going through could fall under the definition of coercive control or any of the other behaviors that would warrant a restraining order, so that going into filing a restraining order whether or not it's likely to be granted. Because obviously if you go in and you file a restraining order and it's ultimately denied, that can come with a whole host of consequences from the person against whom you filed a restraining order. So that's pretty much it on Jennifer's Law. If you have any questions, as usual, feel free to give our office a call at any time.